the Year?
He is.
Like in sports, it's. Well, I think it's got to be Ted Cruz.
Got to be Ted Cruz, no doubt about it. I mean, I've had people say that they've not seen somebody like this in decades in the Senate.
He is. Man, I mean,
he came out swinging.
He's impressive.
Yes, he is.
I was with his father the other day, who's a pastor, who also doesn't hold back. And so it's a family trait, I might mention. Really, his dad is bold from the pulpit, and his son is certainly bold in the Senate Judiciary meetings. I mean, whether it's Chuck Hagel, whether it's gun control, or this issue of drone strikes, I mean, he has really made a name for himself, and, of course, has a target painted on his back. I mean, the mainstream media's come after him like nothing.
He painted the target. He didn't care.
Yeah,
he's that kind of person.
You know, I remember. You know, remember Jesse Helms when he was in the Senate. Yeah. You know, there were times when people would make fun of him. There were people ridicule him in the Senate committee meetings, and he would just look up and like, I really don't care.
No, I know that's just.
We just haven't had many people like that in a long time.
No,
that just really don't
right.
care. They want to do the right thing, and they don't care what the politically correct culture tells them that they should believe or say.
You're right. I met Ted Cruz last fall, before the election, at the Values Voters Summit in the green room. He was getting ready to go on. I'd already spoken to the crowd, and then candidate Cruz was getting ready to speak. And when I met him in the hall, first of all, I didn't recognize him, and then when I did get a chance to shake his hand, I knew who he was, but I had not seen his picture or something. I don't know. But anyway, he was a rather unassuming guy, you know,
yes.
just you know, normal guy. Hey, how you doing? Good. How you? Where you from? Yada yada yada. And then he got on the stage, and whoa, man! I mean, he was Mike Huckabee on steroids. I mean, but his knowledge of the Constitution was like David Barton or something. I mean,
yes.
He was like a scholar and a regular guy at the same time with the ability to communicate. So you know
Very
this,
good.
you know him. But I was really impressed, and I thought, man, if this guy gets elected, the Democrats don't want to see him coming, and I don't even know if the Republicans want to see him coming, because he's going to hold their feet to the fire.
The tall grass when he starts getting criticized by the New York Times or the Washington Post or whatever. But we'll give him Rookie of the Year. How about that?
Yeah, we just gave him Rookie.
That's
Today's
right.
issues Rookie of the Year is Senator Ted Cruz from Texas. Back to this, what these guys are wanting from Eric Holder, the Attorney General, and from President Obama is for them to say that using drones against American citizens on U.S. soil is unconstitutional, Mr.
Right.
Attorney General. Is that correct? And he won't say so. Is that true?
Oh, boy. And if you want to get a laugh, watch because it's on YouTube there, where Ted Cruz is really just asking, is it unconstitutional to kill an American citizen with a drone strike absent an imminent threat? Because some people will say, okay, we could come up with a scenario possibly if there were terrorists that came in from Canada and they've now taken over part of Minnesota or something. I mean, you can come up with all these kinds of things, but absent a threat. And so what you get back is the kind of fuzzy kind of comments that we've come to expect, not only in the Clinton administration, but the Obama administration. And he said, well, I don't think that would be appropriate. And, Ted Cruz, he fears neither God nor man. He said, wait a minute, Mr. Attorney General, this is not difficult. Appropriate? I just want to know a yes or a no. And finally, after pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, he finally said, okay, well, then no. Appropriate means no, but he just could not bring himself to acknowledge the constitutionality or the unconstitutionality of some of these actions. And I think it just shows you the world of gray that these people live in. I know there's a little bit of gray in the world, but there's a fair amount of black and white. And when you can't pin them down and you start getting these, well, it depends on what the definition of is kind of answer back, you've got a real problem. And when the lead attorney in America, the top law enforcement officer, can't give you a straight answer, that should concern American citizens.
Well, so do you think this is over? I mean, or is it, were they just trying to make a point?
I think they're making a point. I think there's going to be more. I do believe that there is a real desire right now because you got to recognize this is not just a Ted Cruz issue. Certainly, this is one time where the kind of the spectrum of liberal to conservative isn't so much a straight line; it's like a circle. In other words, the people that are really conservative on some of these issues also find a fair amount of agreement from people that are really liberal. I just mentioned a minute ago how Ron Wyden, pretty liberal, progressive member of the Senate from Oregon, found himself in agreement with Rand Paul, libertarian conservative from Kentucky. Same thing here on these drone strikes. You've got a fair number of Democrats that are saying, we've got a little bit of a question about this too. Our guy's in power at the moment, but I think if they think down the road, there would be a lot more controversy right now about this drone strike policy if President George W. Bush was still in office. And right now, the mainstream press is giving it a pass. But I think smarter people say, wait a minute, we are allowing the President of the United States to be judge and executioner. That cannot be constitutional. But I'd love to open up the phone and see if somebody agrees or disagrees.
All right, let's do that. Here's the phone number. If you have a question or comment about any of the topics we've talked about, 888-589-8840. Toll free 888-589-8840 is our phone number. If you'd like to call in with your question or your comment about any of the topics we've talked to Kerby Anderson about today. I'm Tim Wildman with Ray Pritchard, and we invite your phone calls, 888-589-8840.
Kerby, I want to ask you something about this issue of sequestration.
Sure.
I think that the average American has difficulty understanding what's at issue here. We don't even use the word sequester in normal conversation.
It sounds like a disease, doesn't it?
It does. So, Kerby, let's just start with definition. When you sequester something, what exactly are you doing?
Well, it's basically an automatic cutoff, and it's a cutoff that was created by the White House but agreed to by both sides of the aisle that said, let's just have a sword hanging over this super committee that says if they can't come up with budget cuts, and we do need to cut spending, I think everybody agrees with that, that then we will have these draconian cuts come down, which would then, over a 2-year period, you hear the term $85 billion and then $44 billion. Well, $85 billion is over 2 years, but over this next fiscal year, it would actually be a cut of $44 billion, which sounds like a lot of money, except you realize we spend as a country $10 billion every day. So essentially what it's saying is that we would cut back 4 days out of 365 days, if you want to think about it that way. But that was still supposed to be so draconian because the cuts would half go to Defense Department, half would go to domestic, that you would then have somebody actually say, we've got to do something better than this. Well, as we well know, the super committee didn't do anything, Congress didn't do anything, and so last Friday, the sequestration took place, and so as a result, the White House now has been trying to figure out ways to maximize the pain as much as they possibly can. Because after all, if you just cut off some redundant departments, nobody's going to fuss about this. So that's why the White House announced the other day that now during the spring break for all the kids, they're canceling all the visitor tours of the White House. And you're going to start hearing about closing down the Washington Monument, the Smithsonian Institutions, the national parks, all those kinds of things, because obviously not only the president, but these bureau heads are probably going to do what they can to maximize the amount of pain. So these are automatic cuts that have been implemented and can be evaluated by the end of this month, because we have to have another continuing resolution by March 27th. The House has put forward one, but we'll see whether or not the Senate passes it or whether the President signs it. But we're back into another crisis that's going to take place in the next 3 weeks.
Louis Gohmert, the congressman from Texas, said, all right, Mr. President, if you're going to cut off visitors to the White House, I'm going to cut off your golf trips to Tiger Woods.
How
about
was an amendment to the continuing resolution.
Right.
I love that. Don't
I'd
you?
vote for that.
Yeah.
Good for him.
We're going to cut off your golf trips if you're going to cut off the kids coming to visit the White House. Let's go to...
This is Brad calling in from Wichita, Kansas. Brad, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
What's your question or comment for Kerby Anderson?
This is going back to those these illegal drone strikes that we're talking about. Was there sometime after the Civil War in the 1800s where there was a a law passed called the Logan Act, where the United States military could not be turned against its own people.
Right. In Posse Comitatus, we've got a lot of things that are certainly relevant to that discussion. And, Brad, it really brings up a bigger issue because you've got Homeland Security right now that is, purchased 1.4 billion rounds, a billion with a B, 1.4 billion rounds of hollow point bullets. And then they're talking about buying some tanks and other things. Tim and Ray, I just wonder if maybe some people in the administration believe that because of these budget cuts, maybe because of the possibility of an economic collapse, the people in Homeland Security and maybe even the Justice Department are trying to plan for civil unrest, because who would have seriously thought about a drone strike against an American citizen on American soil? Why would you think that Homeland Security needs more than 1 billion rounds of hollow point bullets? You don't use those for target practice. It's almost like they're planning for some really disaster to take place, and that they will need to deal with either a terrorist incursion or a population that's gone crazy because of an economic collapse.
What do you think, Brad?
Trying not to have what happened over in Greece. After they made all their necessary cuts, there was rioting and all that good stuff. And, of course, if it happens over here, everybody's got a gun, and which is a good thing, in my opinion. But I just, I'm getting so tired of these so-called career politicians that are just, they swear on the Constitution to uphold it and all that good stuff, and then they throw it out the window as soon as they get elected. When is that madness going to come to an end? Yeah.
Okay, Brad, that's a good question. We have drifted so far astray from our founding documents. I mean, from the Constitution, even. I don't even know that many of our elected politicians even know the Constitution anymore. You know what I'm saying? So we do have people like Rand Paul, like Ted Cruz, and others, Mike Lee, Marco Rubio, some of the new guys in the Senate, for instance, who are citing the Constitution, in public forums often, so that to remind,
blowing the dust off the ancient document and saying to Eric Holder, don't know if you're familiar with this, but this is the Constitution.
Exactly. You're listening to the radio program Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network.